what democracy looks like.
Tell me what democracy looks like.
This is what democracy looks like.
Tell me what democracy looks like.
This is what democracy looks like.
Tell me what community looks like.
This is what community looks like.
Tell me what community looks like.
This is what community looks like.
I believe that we will win.
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 I believe. I believe. I believe that we will win. I believe that we will win. I believe that we will win.
I believe that we will win.
I believe that we will win.
I believe that we will win.
No justice, no peace. 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 No racist police. No justice, no peace. No racist police. This is what democracy looks like. This is what democracy looks like. This is what democracy looks like. Tell me what psychology looks like. This is what psychology looks like. Tell me what psychology looks like. This is what psychology looks like. Tell me what psychology looks like. This is what psychology looks like. Tell me what psychology looks like. This is what psychology looks like. Tell me what psychology looks like. This is what psychology looks like. Tell me what psychology looks like. This is what psychology looks like. Tell me what psychology looks like. This is what psychology looks like. Tell me what psychology looks like. This is what psychology looks like. Eric Garner, Michael Brown,
Shut this racist system down.
Eric Garner, Michael Brown, shut this racist system down.
Eric Garner, Michael Brown.
Shut this racist system down.
Eric Garner, Michael Brown.
Shut this racist system down.
Edward Martin, Michael Brown.
Shut this racist system down.
Tony Rice, Michael Brown.
Shut this racist system down.
Sandra Bland, Michael Brown.
Shut this racist system down.
What do we want?
Justice.
When do we want it?
Now.
What do we want?
Justice.
When do we want it?
Now.
If we don't get it,
Shut it down.
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 Okay. What?
Say what? Ain't no power like the power of people, cause the power of people don't stop. Say what? Ain't no power like the power of people, cause the power of people don't stop. Say what? Ain't no power like the power of people, cause the power of people don't stop. Say what? Ain't no power like the power of people, cause the power of people don't stop. Say what? Ain't no power like the power of people, cause the power of people don't stop. Ain't no power like the power of people, cause the power of people don't stop. Ain't no power like the power of people, cause the power of people don't stop. Ain't no power like the power of people, cause the power of people don't stop. Ain't no power like the power of people, cause the power of people don't stop. Ain't no power like the power of people, cause the power of people don't stop.
Whose streets?
Our streets!
Whose streets?
Our streets!
Whose streets?
Our streets!
A
This is what psychology looks like.
Tell me what psychology looks like.
This is what psychology looks like.
Tell me what psychology looks like.
This is what psychology looks like.
Tell me what community looks like.
This is what community looks like.
Tell me what community looks like.
This is what community looks like.
Tell me what community looks like.
This is what community looks like.
Show me what activism looks like.
This is what activism looks like.
Show me what activism looks like.
This is what activism looks like.
Show me what justice looks like.
This is what justice looks like.
Show me what justice looks like.
This is what justice looks like.
The people united can never be defeated.
The people united can never be defeated.
What?
People united can never be defeated.
What?
People united can never be defeated. 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 The people united can never be defeated. The people united can never be defeated. The people united can never be defeated.
Whose streets?
Our streets!
Whose streets?
Our streets!
What do we want?
Justice!
When do we want it?
Now!
What do we want?
Justice!
When do we want it?
Now!
If we don't get it,
Shut it down!
we don't get it.
Shut it down!
We don't get it.
Shut it down!
We don't get it.
Shut it down!
No justice.
No peace!
No racist
Police! No justice, no peace! No racist police! No justice, no peace! No racist police! No justice, no peace! No racist police!
Black Lives Matter.
Black Lives Matter! 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 Black Lives Matter!
I love how you just ends up holding the sign. Okay, I got it. Who do you serve? Who do you protect? Who do you serve? Who do you protect?
Not
Who
us.
do you serve? Who do you protect?
Not us.
Who do you protect?
Not us.
Who do you protect?
Testing.
Not us.
Who do you protect?
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 Not us.
Black Lives Matter.
Black Lives Matter! 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 Black Lives Matter!
Thank you everyone for coming today.
I just want to see how many people we got to come out.
Good job. So proud of
My name is Cokley, and I've been one of the main organizers for this event. As you know from Black, experts from Black Advocacy speaking shortly, I'm not one of those experts. I'm merely an ally in this, like all of you, like many of you. As you know, sorry. Sorry. taking time away from your schedule to come be with us today. Many of you believe in the same idea in why we started this march. You believe that while the American Psychological Association has done some great things for Black lives, it absolutely can do more and must do more. Okay. And I hope that many of you will get some of the answers in terms of what more psychology can do for Black lives today. Some of these wonderful speakers will be giving you some of those answers, but you won't be getting all of them. Some more questions will emerge later on as well. We hope today can be a spark and reignite and reinvigorate your activism. I want to pose some questions now and kind of leave them in the air. Are we as psychologists being absolutely relentless in our pursuit of justice? Are we willing to sacrifice some of our own privilege to help those who have less and be on the side of righteousness?
Yes!
Is whispering our support for Black lives enough when others are willing to shout their hatred out loud in public in front of millions of people?
No!
Furthermore, what more can we do and how do we move forward? We believe that this march began because we wanted to make a statement. We wanted to say loudly and proudly to Black America that we see you, we stand with you, and we will fight beside you. Thank you. For our first guest speaker, we're very proud to have Jumoke Emery from the local chapter of Black Lives Matter, Black Lives 5280. In organizing this march, we felt it was imperative to build connections with the community, because that's how we move forward through this. So without any further ado, Jumoke Emery.
Good morning. My name is Jumoke Emery. I'm a community organizer. I'm one of the members of the core leadership team of Black Lives Matter 5280. Deciding to come to give this speech this morning was a dangerous decision for me. Deciding to get out of bed this morning was a dangerous decision for me. It's becoming increasingly uncomfortable to continue this fight sometimes. It's becoming increasingly uncomfortable to be part of a worldwide movement declaring the simple fact of the legitimacy of my life. However, I'm quickly coming to realize that often there is an inverse relationship to comfort and safety. Because it seems that as a nation, we've become increasingly comfortable with the militarization of our police force, leading to a current situation where there are more Black men and women and non-cis folks under correctional control now than there were at the height of chattel slavery in the 1800s. But we've become really comfortable with that. We've become really comfortable with the slashing of psychiatric budgets, really comfortable with seeing mental health counseling and therapy as luxury items or luxury accommodations. Meanwhile, the slashing of psychiatric budgets has led to departments of corrections across the country becoming the #1 mental health provider in their states. The Denver Metro Jail is currently the #1 mental health provider in the Metro County area. It's inherently unsafe, but we're comfortable with that. For those of us who are awake enough, or as we say, woke enough, to be uncomfortable with these problems, it seems as though we're only satisfied with comfortable solutions. We're satisfied with providing anti-bias police trainings.
Not enough.
We're satisfied with pro bono services.
Not enough.
It's not enough.
Not enough.
We're satisfied with pushing for police accountability. It's not enough. Because you see, police accountability is an oxymoron. The police can't be any more accountable for their actions than a hammer can be accountable for its actions. I'm not interested in building a more gentler, kinder, humane slave catcher. You shouldn't be either. I'm realizing that in order for our communities, for our world, for our nation to be more safe, particularly for Black folks, we are going to have to get uncomfortable. I was surprised to hear that the APA, the largest association of psychologists in the world, has not yet made a formal announcement in support of Black Lives Matter. Not okay.
Not okay.
But perhaps that's uncomfortable. Perhaps that's outside the realm of normalcy. In order for Black lives to truly matter in this country, you all as an association, the APA as an association is going to have to get uncomfortable with your solutions. Uncomfortable pushing for the spotlight and the importance of mental health care. Uncomfortable advocating for those who are seen as criminals. Make no mistake, Blackness, mental illness have been criminalized in this country. And if you want to do your work more effectively, if you want to make systemic change, you're going to have to get uncomfortable. I hope today is the start of a process for the APA to do just that. Thank you.
Okay, so for our next guest speaker, we have Jasmine Jenkins. Jasmine Jenkins is involved in the Black Lives Matter movement in Atlanta, Georgia, and her hometown in Pasadena, California. Since earning her bachelor's degree in psychology from Spelman College, she went on to complete a dual master's degree program at the University of Pennsylvania. Today, Jasmine is a second-year doctoral student in counseling psychology at the University of Georgia. Jasmine is committed to social justice work along the school prison pipeline in the movement for Black lives. Her research focuses on the influence of racial identity on behavior in incarcerated African American youth and the impact of Black Lives Matter and social media on the mental health of young Black activists. Clinically, Jasmine provides counseling services for low-income community members, youth on probation, and incarcerated youth. Within APA, Jasmine serves as the mentorship program co-chair within the Division 45 Student Subcommittee. Most recently, she organized and conducted a webinar entitled Black Lives Matter, Psychologist in Training Edition, Self-Care While Caring for Others, led by Dr. M.Phil.Ed. On this day, Jasmine joins us because she wants to encourage more psychology students to become involved in the movement. Thank you.
Good morning. As Billy stated, my name is Jasmine Jenkins, and I am a second-year doctoral student in counseling psychology at the University of Georgia. I want to start off by thanking you all for coming here and supporting the movement for Black Lives. We thought that it was imperative that we held this march simultaneously with the APA convention because...
Louder!
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me now? As individuals in a field that prides themselves in social justice work, we need to be more active in the Black Lives Matter movement. We need to be protecting Black people who are being killed at the hands of the police and protect and heal the communities that are impacted by police brutality within their neighborhoods. Unfortunately, history repeats itself. We as a field have been here before. In 1967, Dr. Martin Luther King came to the APA convention and talked about the importance of social scientists in the movement in the 1960s. And in 1968, Dr. Joseph White, who may or may not be here today, led a group of brave individuals into the board of directors meeting at APA and demanded that APA do more for the Black community. After that, that led to a movement of multiculturalism within the field and more psychologists becoming engaged in the Black community. It shouldn't stop there. Now is our time to challenge APA to do a little bit more. Some of you may have read the mission statement for this march today, and in it we indicated that we appreciate APA for its funding and support for programs to provide awareness of the issues of police brutality and awareness of discrimination and awareness of racial stress, but we need them to do a little bit more. We provided 3 suggestions for the American Psychological Association. Those 3 suggestions included APA providing funding for the development, implementation, and assessment of therapeutic interventions into communities of color that are experiencing police brutality. The second suggestion was that we hold a summit entitled Culturally Competent Policing in Communities of Color so that we can develop more interventions and have more research and have more hands-on activism within the movement. And lastly, the third suggestion was that APA provides a webinar that teaches psychologists how to provide implicit and explicit assessment of police racism so that we can get police officers who are racist or have racial biases, whether those are unconscious or conscious, off the streets and out of our communities. So as students, and as a student myself, I'm sure some of you may be wondering, how can I be involved? How can I be active? How can I make a change within the field and within the communities in which we live? I have 3 challenges for you today. Those are: take care of yourself, take action, and take back our dreams. As Gilbert mentioned, I am very interested in looking at how Black Lives Matter and social media impacts the mental health of young Black activists. I know that as psychologists, we are in a position of taking care of others consistently, but I also believe that we should take care of ourselves. So my first challenge for you is take care of yourself. Do whatever it is that you have to do, whether that be pray, whether that be rest, whether that be take a break from social media, whether that be get involved in march, get involved in your local Black Lives Matter chapters, protest, whatever it is. I personally took a break from social media, not all social media, but Facebook specifically. I felt that it gave me an enormous sense of relief, and it also allowed me to engage in more hands-on activism and think about how I can make a change within this field of psychology and the community that I lived. So that also brings me to my second charge to you all, which is take action. If your environment looks a little bit like mine as a student, it's pretty much academic buildings and the communities that surround those academic buildings, so you can utilize those settings to take action. If you're in a space in academia, try to provide safe spaces to have difficult dialogues around race, address microaggressions, address injustices within those communities. I know that sometimes it can seem small to just continue talking about things and talking about things and talking about things, but we need to also remember that the core problem here is deeply rooted racism. And oftentimes, eliminating that racism starts with a conversation. It starts with addressing someone's bias, whether that be a conscious bias or unconscious bias, or if someone did a microaggression against you, calling that out. So it may seem small, but at the end of the day, it can have a large impact. Take action in your community. For you, it may look different than other individuals, but it's about you finding out what it is that you can do in your community. I personally work with youth on probation, so kids who are adjudicated for whatever the reason is, and so I know that it's my responsibility to have conversations with them and to help them heal as the world watches individuals who look just like them get killed at the hands of the police. I also know that it's my responsibility to talk to probation officers, Department of Juvenile Justice, about their interactions with kids of color and make sure that they're working with them and not against them. I know that I should reach out to the local police departments within Athens, Georgia to see if they're doing any type of racial bias training or assessments. My point is, I've thought of a couple things that I can do within my community, and I know and believe, trust that you all can do the exact same thing and take those steps. So take action. honestly, I know it's difficult as students, it's difficult as people in general to keep hope, to remain optimistic about our future and our dreams for our future, especially when we see the news consistently showing the same thing repeated over and 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 over. People are being killed at the hands of the police, and those individuals that are killing them are not being held accountable. We've seen numerous instances where people are not indicted, where they are not charged. For example, Eric Gardner, Michael Brown, Sandra Bland, the list goes on and on. And so that can kind of be deterring at times, but I challenge you to take back our dreams, take back the dreams of hope for our future, of success, take back the dreams of Martin Luther King, of Dr. Joseph White, dreams of equity, dreams of peace, the dreams that some of our brothers and sisters are not here to live out today. I honestly believe that the movement for Black Lives will lead to future generations not dealing with extensive police brutality and racism, not only in the police department, but also in our world and our society. And it is my belief in this dream that sort of keeps me going. So, in the words of Kendrick Lamar, we're gonna be all right.
So for our next guest speaker, we have Della V. Mosley. Della V. Mosley is a counseling psychology doctoral student at the University of Kentucky and a scholar activist in the movement for Black Lives. Della received her MS in school counseling from Johns Hopkins University and her EDS in counseling psychology from University of Kentucky. Della has been fighting for Black racial justice for over a decade. Her most recent efforts, undertaken while pursuing her doctorate, include managing the website blmactivism.com, hosting counseling groups and healing circles for communities suffering from racial trauma, and maintaining the Twitter page for @4BlackUK, which is a resource that serves the dual purpose of reporting racial bias occurring on and around campus and also uplifting the accomplishments of Black students and faculty at the University of Kentucky. Her most recent article in the 2016 July Journal of Psychology of Men in Masculinity amplifies the Black Lives Matter movement while highlighting how Black men's legitimate violence continues to be pathologized by psychologists. She is currently traveling the country interviewing Black Lives Matter activists in hopes of building a theory of Black activism development for her dissertation study. She is an APA Minority Fellow, Della V. Mosley.
Thank you. Thank you for coming. Thank you for caring. There is a war going on against Black bodies right now. There's a war going on. Black people are suffering or dying, certainly not thriving, facing so many disparities, and as psychologists, we are uniquely and perfectly positioned to do something about it, right? And so today I want to reach everyone in our field. For those of you who might need a story to get the urgency of the movement, I want to share a personal story. For those who get the urgency but aren't quite sure about what the movement for Black Lives actually is, what their values are, I want to share those. And for those of you who are already committed to ending the war against Black minds and bodies, I want to give you a couple more ideas for how you might go about that. And I hope to do that in 10 minutes. So one of the values of the movement is that the most directly affected people should be in leadership in the movement, at the center of the movement, telling their own stories directly. We're experts at our own lives. And I'm blessed enough to be here with my family. And so I want to ask my family to come up because sadly the story I have to tell involves them, so please give them some love. My mommy, my sister, my dad, my brother, my partner, his mother. Black Lives Matter. So I recently came across an audio recording from 1 year ago, and I was preparing for a presentation that I was going to give in Toronto at APA to grad students on what we could do to mobilize for justice. And so maybe like 5 minutes, so I'm recording the audio of this as I prepare, and maybe 5 minutes into this audio, I'm about to open the floor up, or I'm saying that I'm going to open the floor for people to tell their stories of racial oppression. And my sister interrupts, so I'm giving this practice run in front of my mom and my sister. Can y'all wait? So I'm giving this practice run in front of them, and I'm like, going to open up the floor for a conversation about students' experiences because we have our own experiences, right? And my sister asked, well, what if no one has a story to tell? What do you do then? And I said, well, I don't think that'll happen, but maybe I'll tell the most recent story about Dad if you guys are comfortable with that. And my sister says, well, I never heard that story. You know, I'm mad at you guys for not telling me that story. So rather than retelling that story for you now, I'm going to play that 2-minute audio clip. And as I play this audio, I want you to look at my dad and my brother and my partner and think about as you hear the trauma that many Black men experience, I want you to see their faces. I want this to humanize Black in this moment. As you hear my mom questioning and adding in comments, I want you to think about all the mothers out there suffering who have lost people to police violence. And as you hear my sister asking questions and you hear my anger as I'm telling this story, I want you to look at us. So if we can just get a little silent, I'm going to play this 2-minute clip.
The short version of the story is his realtor told him to go check out a house in the neighborhood, gave him the code to put in this past Christmas. Or I heard it around Christmas, so it was before Christmas, or maybe I heard it Thanksgiving, it was right before fall. So the realtor gave him the information about the house. He went to the house, put in the little, you know how they have a little lockbox on the door, he had the code, opened it up, got the key, went in, checked out the house. Luckily he was in Mom's car, nice, pretty car without tools in it and all this other crap, right? But he was checking out the house, he was waiting on Ali to meet him. He's down in the basement. He thinks it's Ali coming in, and it's a police officer coming in because someone has called the police, basically. Oh, Black man in a nice neighborhood. Whatever. So he's downstairs, he thinks it's Ali. By the time he realizes it's not Ali, he's hearing the yelling. He starts to head towards the stairs and sees a police officer. Like that.
Put your hands up.
How? With a gun pointed at him. And then as he looks, he sees 2 officers on the stairs, and there's one more at the top of the stairs. So it's 3 officers with guns pointed at him in this narrow strip in this house. And when he reaches the top of the stairs, after like talking and trying to like de-escalate whatever, it's a 4th officer there. And I'm not sure if the 4th one had a gun or not, but I know for sure 3 of them had. Right. And it he said it was play around, like it was minutes passing, like real minutes, not like I'm in fear minutes, but like real minutes were passing while they had kept the gun on him. He had to like pull out his cell phone, show the email from the realtor, like run his mouth, do this gift of gab, and it's just like if he wasn't who he was, if he didn't have that, if it was his first sale or his first time trying to buy a house, you know what I'm saying? What would they have done? How? Or if he just isn't who he is, it didn't feel like playing that game. A 59-year-old man. And so he pulled up the he said, oh no, my realtor, he's like, you know, you're going to have a lot of traffic around here soon because, you know, this house is going on the market in like a day or 2 or something, like trying to like calm him down and play the little game. You know, talk, get him to calm down. And eventually they looked him up, ran his license, finally lowered their guns, finally left.
Well, he really called the
guns. Huh? What should we ever do it? I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. That's a good question. I don't know. But I'm just like, this should happen nowhere.
Do you see us? Do you see the urgency?
Yes.
If you see us, say Black Lives Matter.
Black Lives Matter.
So a lot of us here, we recognize how privilege works, right? I described how my dad's class privilege and ability to code switch and perform well under pressure saved him in this moment. But everyone doesn't have that privilege. We know what happens to Black folks who don't have the privileges we do, who come up against the police in today's world as we so often do. Alton Sterling, Sandra Bland. And that's why the movement for Black Lives says that all Black lives matter. Queer Black lives, trans Black lives, immigrant Black lives, poor working class Black lives, Black women's lives, Black elder and children's lives. Black lives matter. All Black lives, because we know that none of us are safe. A lot of people are confused about what Black Lives Matter is and what it's not. And I need to clarify this because when we're out here protesting in the streets, or we're at home writing our op-ed, or we're organizing, and we sit down at the end of the day and watch the news and see ourselves be compared to terrorists, it's insult on top of injury, literal injury, right? Because that story you just heard describes some terrorism, and we're not the terrorists. We're terrified of becoming the next hashtag. As one of my activist sisters in the movement, Rahel Tesfaramian, said, she was giving a talk about how activism shouldn't be this elite thing. She said that if you're Black and you want to live, you need to be an activist. And if you're not Black and you want Black people to live, you need to be an activist. We need you to be an activist. So if you see the urgency, and you're a psychologist, you probably want a theory, you want an approach, you want to make sure that the way that you engage in this movement is aligned with your ethics and your values. And so these are online. I'm going to share some of the, I want to introduce the movement for Black Lives Values. These are online, and they were shared last year at the Movement for Black Lives National convening in Cleveland that I attended. We're over to strategize around these. But the mass media machine isn't interested in sharing the reality that it actually is, and so I want to do that today. Black Lives Matter is a political and ideological movement in a world where Black lives are systematically and intentionally targeted for demise. An important principle is that we focus on thriving instead of surviving. Our vision is based on the world that we want, not the one that we are in. We seek to transform, not simply react. We want our people to thrive, not just exist, and we think beyond the possible. These are values guided by love. Next, the movement declares that experimentation and innovation must be built into our work, and that evaluation and assessment are built into our culture. These are the types of things that we as psychologists are trained and equipped to do. They state that principled struggle can exist in a positive environment, and talk about how we have to be honest with each other by embracing direct and loving communication. This is literally what we're trained to do, right? It's simply a matter of applying our training to the civil rights movement that's going on right now. We need to call people into this movement using direct and loving communication about how their silence or inaction contributes to Black pain, Black trauma, Black death, oppression. The next value, my favorite, is love and self-love. It's practiced in every element of all we do. Love drives our work, and it's the indicator of our success in this movement. Be clear about what Black Lives Matter values are. And as you're engaging in activism, if it's not with the formal Black Lives Matter network, check out their values and make sure that they're aligned with yours. These are the movement for Black Lives values, which align with mine, and I think a lot of us here as psychologists. I know as counseling psychologists, we endorse a lot of these. As a counseling psychologist in training, I know we endorse a lot of these values. And as healers and helpers, regardless of our discipline, I know that this is what we're about. And so we should be aligning ourselves publicly with the Black Lives Matter movement. Only 3 principles left. This movement has a 360-degree vision, and this means that we honor past struggles and wisdom from elders. The work that we do today builds the foundation of our movements of tomorrow. And that's why we, students, us grad students, we need your support. We need the support of people with different expertise, different experience, who've been in leadership roles. We need to pull from the best of us. We need to pull from all of us. Self-care is another value that we can all get behind, right? The value says we build resilient spaces by budgeting time, energy, and resources for healing. I know we don't have a lot of space for that in our lives right now as activists and doctoral students. And I can imagine the people who are on the streets with less resources than we have, they need some extra support. So how can we as psychologists help them to get it? Can we provide healing spaces? Or if that's not your lane, how can we maybe donate funds to groups who are already black individuals and groups who are already providing these services in their communities themselves? My mentor, Dr. Candace Crowell, just released a Black Lives Matter mindfulness meditation. So it's about finding what your particular lane is, what your strengths are, what your skills are, what your interests are, and how you can align it with this movement. There's a space for you here. And the final principle, training and leadership development should be fundamental. Our movement must constantly be growing, and leadership must constantly multiply. So if you're not involved, I need you to think about everything that I shared with you. I want you to hold on to this image of my family up here, and the stories that I shared, and the values that I shared if they moved you. And I invite you to build with us.
Thank you, Della. A round of applause for Della. Our next guest speaker is Dr. Kira Hudson-Banks. She is an associate professor in the Department of Psychology at St. Louis University. Her research examines the experience of discrimination, its impact on mental health and intergroup relations. Her courses have ranged from abnormal psychology to the psychology of racism. She has published in the American Psychological Association journals such as American Psychologist, Cultural Diversity and Ethnic Minority Psychology, the Journal of Diversity in Higher Education, and the Harvard Business Review, and popular media outlets such as Huffington Post and The Atlantic. She served as the racial equity consultant for the Ferguson Commission and has worked in the community with activists to promote mental wellness and emotional emancipation. Dr. Kira Hudson-Banks.
I want to say thank you to Gilbert and to Jasmine and to Bella and to everyone who came out today. In some ways, I feel like there's nothing left to say. And I think that's a beautiful thing as a psychologist. It's funny, as I engage with the activists in St. Louis and beyond, I'm considered an elder to them. So I'm embracing that and saying it is beautiful. Our future is bright in the field, and I thank you all for calling us out here today. So I had a few things I wanted to make sure I said. One of the things I want to say is that I declare myself as a psychologist for Black lives. That my purpose is to aim for emotional emancipation, liberation for all people, for Black people in particular, on purpose and without apology. And I want to be clear that there is a place for everyone. And so my question today for you is, what is your front line? Right? I just shared with you my purpose and where I see myself fitting in, and I just want to be honest that it's something I've always researched. I've researched the experience of discrimination, its impact on mental health for over 15 years now. And my husband, who's here with me today, said just this year, oh, I really get what you study now, why it's important. Thanks, man. But what I want to say is the willingness to stand on that calling for me came from standing shoulder to shoulder with the young people in St. Louis, right? If they had not stood in front of those tanks and said, we will not leave, I don't know that we would be here in this moment. There would still be organizations, Black Lives Matter existed before Ferguson, BYP, Black Youth Project, Advancement Project. The organizations that make up the movement for Black lives are not new. It's not a fad. They're based on centuries of work whose purpose is to defy the lie of Black inferiority. And I want to be clear, the Association of Black Psychologists, the Community Health Network, actually has created a framework that they call emotional emancipation circles that they hope is a vehicle for that emotional emancipation. And they have a website, defythelie.org. And so today I want to call out the fact that we're not here to shame APA, but we are here to call out APA and say you need to be doing more. And that the work that we've done as an organization, if we are really honest with ourselves as psychologists, we have been vehicles for perpetuating the myth of Black inferiority and for perpetuating the myth of white superiority. And so I want to just be clear that we have a history of activism and resistance in our organization. And so the fact that we are here today calling for APA to do more, as Jasmine mentioned, is not new, right? We can think about those moments when APA was explicitly called out in 1968 when the Association of Black Psychologists was created because not enough was being done, right? And we can also think about the amazing research that we have within our organization that speaks to defying the lies. I think that as an organization, we can do more to make clear that it is a part of our moral calling, the fabric of our organization, to speak plainly and directly that Black lives matter. And my call to you today is to think about where your front line is. One of the things I want to say is that I've understood, like I said, more clearly in this last year, that emotional emancipation, liberation is what we need. As we dismantle systems of oppression, we also need to make sure, if we think about the theory of Fry and oppression and the bird cage, that the bird can fly once the cage has been dismantled. And to me, that aligns with the core values of being a psychologist. One of the other pieces that I want to make sure to mention is that there's a way in which it will be a hard look at our policies and practices as an organization. Because too often, as Jamoke mentioned, we stay comfortable. I have been called into numerous police departments. Kira, will you create me a training? You know, our police officers don't like the ones that we've had. Could you create one? And I say, sure. And what would you like it to center around? Why should we be doing this? To dismantle systems of oppression, to think about police-community relations. Oh, no, just because the state tells us we have to. I will no longer, as a psychologist, engage in such consulting. And I want to be clear as an organization that we can't just look at training and assessment. Those tools don't exist yet. And so we all have the tools to create them. But when I have people come to me and they say, oh yeah, how could we assess these officers? Well, the IAT doesn't work because we all would have some bias, right? We don't have the tools yet. So my call to you who are passionate about assessment, to find your front line and create those tools. But the larger issue is that we have to keep systemic oppression in mind. We work with individuals as psychologists, yes, but we have to not focus just on training. We have to focus on reform, not just reform. We have to focus on dismantling and recreating a system that is equitable, a system that respects Black lives. I just want to reiterate that we have a long history of this activism within APA. Individuals that I know personally that have shown me the way that I can be an academic and be an activist. I can be an academic and all of these other things that I've said. And so I just want to leave you with the reality that our future is bright, yet we have to keep the system in mind. That so often in our organization, we focus on individual interventions, which are essential, but we can't lose sight of systemic oppression. Thank you all.
So for our next speaker, we have Dr. Kevin Cokley. He is a professor of counseling psychology in African Diaspora Studies at the University of Texas, Austin. He is the director for the Institute for Urban Policy Research and Analysis, editor-in-chief of the Journal of Black Psychology, and a fellow of the American Psychological Association. Dr. Cokley's research and teaching can be broadly categorized in the area of African American psychology. He has been interviewed by Fox News and Time Warner Cable regarding the police shootings of Black men, and he has written several op-eds in the major media outlets, including the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, Dallas Morning News, the American Prospect, the Huffington Post, the Conversation, the Hill, and the Globe and Mail, on topics such as Blacks' rational mistrust of police and the aftermath of Ferguson, race, and institutional racism, changing police tactics, and racial disparities in school discipline. Dr. Kevin Cokley.
So this is a beautiful crowd. Give yourselves a round of applause. So let me be clear. I am a Black psychologist. I'm not a psychologist who happens to be Black. That just happened to me. I was born Black, and I'm going to die Black. I'm a Black psychologist. A Black psychologist who has dedicated his entire career to vocally defending the humanity of Black people. February the 8th, 2016, in my hometown of Austin, Texas, Officer Jeffrey Freeman responded to a call. There was a disturbance reported in the neighborhood. A Black male, naked, was running in the streets, 17-year-old David Joseph. Officer Freeman gets to the scene. David Joseph runs towards him, naked. Officer Freeman shoots him in cold blood. This is considered one of the worst cases of police misconduct in the history of Austin police. What the hell can a naked man do to you running towards you? Clearly there was a mental health emergency. Officer Freeman lost his job, but he was not indicted. Officer Freeman also happened to be an African-American police officer. Folks, this is not about the color of the skin. This is about institutional racism. All right? This is about an institution that systematically degrades denigrates, dehumanizes black bodies as policy. I attended a community forum, wanted to hear what our finest, our Austin police officers would say about community policing. One police officer had the audacity, when asked by an audience member about how do police address institutional racism, had the audacity to say, institutional racism does not exist here. With a straight face. And you can imagine the response that he received. So when you have an institution that is in denial of a problem that we all know exists, we have some work to do, y'all. So, I'm a professor. I like to write. I have a lot of things written here. I'll try not to be too didactic in my approach. Because there are some things that I want to say, and I want to make sure that I cover the points that I have written here. And let's give our student leaders a round of applause. It is their youth of their passion that sometimes has to make us older folks do the right thing. They are responsible for us being here today, so I want to say thank you to all of you. Now, as Jasmine noted, almost 50 years ago in 1967, Dr. Martin Luther King addressed the APA as the convention's invited distinguished address. And in the speech, he told psychologists that the civil rights movement needed the help of social scientists such as black psychologists, or such as psychologists, excuse me. Dr. King said, and I quote, "White America needs to understand that it is poison to its soul by racism, and the understanding needs to be carefully documented and consequently more difficult to reject. The present crisis," he says, "arises because although it is historically imperative that our society take the next step to equality, we find ourselves psychologically and socially imprisoned." Dr. King went on to say, quote, "The white majority, unprepared and unwilling to accept radical structural change, is resisting and producing chaos while complaining that if there were no chaos, orderly change would come." Dr. King indicated that one of the roles of psychologists is in the area of political action. He noted that blacks were experiencing an inner transformation that liberates us from ideological dependence on the white majority. Now, King's words struck at the core of why the Association of Black Psychologists was created a few months later. And 8 months after Dr. King's speech, he was assassinated April 4th, 1968. And at the 1968 APA convention, a group of black psychologists got together and they were like, no more. We cannot stand here and listen to the racist research being promulgated by supposedly our professional association. The ABC challenged APA by saying you essentially are condoning the white racist nature of American society through, quote, inadequate positive measures. You hear me? Inadequate positive measures. Much of what we're seeing today. ABC believed that APA had not sufficiently related to the needs of the black community and had not done enough with its vast resources to assist the black community in overcoming the effects of white racism and to eradicate racism within the white community. Now, for many years, some black psychologists have had trouble embracing and becoming active in APA, I being one of them, because we were never told anything good about APA. We were told APA is your oppressor. By being here, you are participating in your own oppression. So it's been hard for some of us. There was a belief that APA at its core would never change, and that it would always be that organization that would never embrace an agenda that is about the humanization and liberation of black people from systematic racist oppression. Now, let me give credit where credit is due. To its credit, APA is not the organization that it was 40 or 50 years ago. So we've got to give them that acknowledgement. They have attempted in their own way to respond to these extrajudicial police killings of black men and women. And they've engaged in a number of efforts, whether it's contacting the media through their sort of dissemination of research, whether it's providing resources to individuals and families coping with these heinous, tragic incidents, whether it's calling for legislative responses. They've done all of that. So they should be recognized for these efforts. However, for some of us, there is still some disappointment with APA's response because it is seen as being perhaps too clinical and too dispassionate. You can't be clinical and dispassionate when black bodies and brown bodies are being killed every single day. You cannot be dispassionate. APA will remind us that it is not an activist organization. Now, I suspect that explicitly aligning itself with an activist movement, like the movement for Black Lives or Black Lives Matter, may seem a bit too political. Instead, APA, it does not have in its DNA a mission of activism. It just doesn't. And using its own words, it sees itself being more about advocacy. Quote, they say, advancing psychological science to promote health, education, and human welfare. So we respect APA's efforts. They are about advocacy. But let me share this reality. This past Monday, Corinne Gaines, a 23-year-old black woman and mother of two, was shot and killed by Baltimore police over an outstanding police traffic charge. Say her name, Corinne. Corinne is the 9th black woman shot and killed by police this year. Sandra Bland died while in police custody that started with being pulled over for failing to properly have her signal, traffic signal. This, of course, escalated and became violent, and Sandra Bland supposedly committed suicide. Her family disputes this. But the point is, she should have never been pulled over, and she certainly should have never been arrested. Never. And so we must remember that while much of the attention is placed on black men who are shot and killed by police, black women are also being disproportionately brutalized and killed every single day. We must never forget that. The litany of black names of people who have been killed by police over the past couple of years is beyond disturbing. Tamir Rice, Rakia Boyd, Laquan McDonald, Jessica Williams, Alton Sterling, Philando Castile, to name a few. Say their names. Profound pain, disillusionment, mistrust, rage, helplessness, and despair are feelings running rampant in black communities and families all across this country. When will the next unarmed black person be shot and killed? It is not a matter of if it will happen, it's a matter of when it will happen. I have a PhD in counseling psychology. I teach at one of the best public universities in this country. I've published a number of articles, I've written a book, a number of op-eds, and won a number of awards. I am the father of 2 beautiful black children. Yet every single day, I worry. I worry that it can all be taken away with the wrong word, a wrong gesture, a wrong move. And it's possible that when I leave my house, I may not return to see my family. I live with that every single day. That's real. My feelings are real. Our feelings are real. our emotions are raw. Now, let's review this scripture. We are stating unequivocally that no life should be seen more valuable than another. Now, unfortunately, a binary has been created that forces people to see the deaths of police officers as more tragic than the deaths of black people or vice versa. It is tempting to make this into an us versus them dynamic, but we should not fall prey to this temptation. The pain felt by the family members of slain police officers is the same pain that is felt by the family members of slain unarmed black people. The pain is not different. Americans' unresolved problems around race makes it difficult to see our shared humanity and truly feel one another's pain. Race and institutional racism have desensitized us to the tragedy of the loss of life. Each senseless loss of life diminishes our collective humanity and causes more racial disharmony and mistrust. Now, psychologists, we ask you to support the movement for Black Lives and the Black Lives Matter movement. And while it should go without saying, I will say it anyway. Support for the movement for Black Lives or the Black Lives Matter movement does not stand in opposition to support for the police, most of whom are not raging racists, but are good and decent people who are genuinely trying to protect the communities that they serve. And I want to acknowledge that. Psychologists have much to offer our nation in the midst of these trying times. It is nice to disseminate research findings to the media and public. This is needed. It is nice to provide resources for coping with the aftermath of violent tragedies. This is needed. It is nice to advocate legislatively. This too is needed. But what is also needed, and I would suggest this is among the most important things that can be done by psychologists, is commitment to King's vision for radical transformation of American society through nonviolent activism. One example of this is commitment through explicit vocal support for the idea that all Black lives matter and explicit condemnation for all of the racist institutions, policies, and procedures that keep Black folks as perpetual second-class citizens undeserving of basic human rights. Psychologists, we can do more. We must do more. We can do better. We must do better. Alata kuta. The struggle continues. Let's do this work, y'all. Peace.
Start with the Asada chant. So repeat after me. It is our duty to fight for our freedom.
It is our duty to fight for our freedom.
It is our duty to win.
It is our duty to win.
We must love and support each other.
We must love and support each other.
We have nothing to lose but our chains.
We have nothing to lose but our chains.
It's our duty to fight for our freedom.
It's our duty to fight for our freedom.
It is our duty to win.
It is our duty to win.
We must love and support each other.
We must love and support each other.
We have nothing to lose but our chains.
We have nothing to lose but our chains. This is what psychology looks like. This is what psychology looks like.
Show me what psychology looks like.
This is what psychology looks like.
Show me what psychology looks like.
This is what psychology looks like.
What do we do? We do no harm.